Splish splash, I was taking a bath. Long about a Saturday night. Yeah. Rubbed up, just relaxing in the tub, thinking everything was alright. Well, I stepped out the tub and put my feet on the floor. I wrapped the towel around me and I opened the door. And then a splish splash, I jumped back in the bath. Well, how was I to know there was a party going on? There was a splishing and a splash, and reeling with the feeling, moving and a grooving, rocking and a rolling. Yeah, yeah.
Welcome back. Hey, how's it going? You guys doing all right? That's great, because we're doing awesome. We're taking a little bit of a departure from our usual fare. Spooky, scary, sci-fi, out there kind of movies. Yeah. And we've been feeling a little bit whimsical, a little bit musical, you might say.
You might say that.
You might say that, and that's where we came to find a movie that we both really enjoyed.
The movie this week is Phantom of the Paradise, which was made in, what,
1974.
74?
Yeah.
It's a pretty cult film. This movie is kind of about Phantom of the Opera, set in modern times, but it filters in a lot of things like Faust.
Yeah, the 12 Circles.
Even bits and pieces of Frankenstein and Picture of Dorian Gray.
Oh, yeah, it's a pastiche.
It's like this weird mishmash of these classic works of horror literature, and it's all set under the backdrop of 70s rock and roll.
Yeah, like a rock opera kind of opus performance sort of thing. And it works very well in blending these all together, because thematically everything kind of keys into the same vibe. Mm-hmm. And so you get the feeling you've heard this story before, but you haven't. You've just heard 10 different stories.
You've heard bits and pieces of it. It's a little smarter than your average movie.
Oh yeah.
It opened in 74 and it was a box office flop. Just about everywhere except one place.
Oddly enough,
Winnipeg,
Canada. If you don't know where Winnipeg is.
Yeah, this thing failed everywhere else, but in Winnipeg it went on for 4 months upon release, and then not continuously, but it
took a couple breaks when big movies were out, but for like the next year, it was constantly asked to be brought back into the theaters.
Mm-hmm. I don't know what's up with Winnipeg. Not that I think this is a bad movie.
No, it's just one of those things you think it would have hit at a much more metropolitan area, and not like Winnipeg's not a great city, but it's.
Have you ever been there?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Very briefly, but it's the last place you'd expect it to hit.
You can't lose our Winnipeg audience.
No, all one of them. But it's one of those movies that it's another dad recommendation.
Yeah, this actually kind of, I saw this years and years ago, back when I was a kid, and I didn't really understand what was going on. All I remember was a guy getting his head pressed by a record press.
Yeah.
And it was kind of creepy. But basically the story is as follows. It's all about the music industry. Mm-hmm. And there's this one guy, Winslow Leach, who has spent years working on a cantata.
Yeah. And it's like a 300-page music opus telling the story of Faust. Mm-hmm. It's a German magician who sold his soul to the devil for power and earthly experience and stuff like that.
And pretty much the same thing happens to poor Winslow.
Because he runs afoul of one of the real movers and shakers, the it guy in music production. His name is Swan, and he owns his own record label, Death Records. Mm-hmm. And they hear Winslow's music and they like the music, but they don't like the guy.
Well, it's like the intro to this movie says, this movie is about the music.
Yeah.
The man who wrote it, the woman who sang it, and the monster that stole it.
Yeah.
And that's pretty well it. But this is some pretty messed up stuff. And not like it's gory or anything like that, but man, this is some sleazy stuff.
Yeah, sleazy. There's dark stuff in there, and from the outset, we always had this. We just had this discussion about it. It was like the first half of the movie is unerringly cheerful and very.
It's funny. It's got its
It's comical.
Here's the thing about this movie. It's got an awesome soundtrack.
Yeah, probably one of the best I've ever heard. In terms of original soundtracks and songs made for the film, wonderful. It's got this mix of so many different genres all at the same time.
Yeah, you got some Beach Boys stuff. You got some like 50s or 60s pop American stuff.
Yeah, up to the Alice Cooper
right,
rock.
Right up to the start of the heavy metal era.
Oh yeah,
I guess.
And it's all performed by the same band, and that's impressive once you figure that out. And no, it's a soundtrack that I've listened to quite a bit, and there's a few songs that I don't care if they're not by real artists or real artists, but they're still catchy. And you know, I find more and more I remember the music more than the movie, and I don't think that's a bad thing.
No,
I think it's a wonderful soundtrack, and it's a great selling point if you ever wanted to show this movie to somebody that wasn't sure. Just say the music's fine, and generally people are on board.
Yeah, like I said, this movie is a very. It's probably the most cult movie we've covered so far, and you know it takes a lot of convincing, in my experience, when you want to show this movie to people.
It took me a lot of convincing. I remember Dad was kind of pestering me on and off for about a year. And I'd always find an excuse just not to sit down and watch it. But you know, when I think it was once again when I was just laid up with sickness. You know, nothing else to do. Might as well watch a movie with Dad. And so I ended up just loving it. And the cast does a great job here. Very strange looking cast.
Yeah, this is. It's an interesting casting job. Like the villain of this movie is a man named Swan, who's played by Paul Williams, who's in the Songwriting Hall of Fame, and he did the music for this.
Yeah,
and it just adds that authenticity because he's in the biz.
Yeah, there's some polish there, and he's obviously knows how to handle himself. And he's probably run across a lot of people that act the way that Swan does.
Yeah. This guy's
so natural.
He's a total worm. I don't say bad things about people or fictional characters. You know, this guy is evil.
What a damn good villain, though. And you know, putting him up against the righteous Winslow Leach, who becomes the Phantom of the Paradise. This goofy, tall, gawky, well-meaning guy with an essentially good heart.
And man, he's got an awesome costume when he finally becomes the Phantom.
Yeah, that's one of the best.
I heard a lot of people say that, and I don't know if this is true, because I don't check my sources, but I've heard people say that George Lucas ripped off that costume for Darth Vader.
I've heard some...
Because Winslow, he's got the helmet, he's dressed in black leather cape, and he's got a voice box right here.
Voice box right on the chest.
Yeah.
And, you know, for a guy like George Lucas, it wouldn't be a stretch to see him taking something like this, because it's cool.
Yeah, it is pretty cool.
Like, if he's going to borrow from anything, borrow from cool.
And young Brian De Palma was just some starting out punk, so who's going to believe him? Well, who would believe George Lucas anyway? He was just starting out too.
Yeah, and over the course of time, he's discredited himself so much that, you know, you could almost believe a story like that. But there's similarities, and there's a lot of cool imagery in Winslow that, man, I want to be Winslow for Halloween one year, but I'm nowhere near that skinny and tall, and I can't find that mask. They don't make them, but. That's for a whole nother Halloween subject.
Yeah.
All in all, I'd say this is one of my most enjoyable movies, and it's right up there with one of my favorite musicals of all time. Like, I can't think of too many other films that
there's plenty of musicals I like.
Oh yeah, same here.
But I like this movie. I don't find it enjoyable because.
Well, yeah, you don't get up to watch it.
No, I mean, like from another way of looking at it would be that this movie's all about making deals with the devil.
Yeah.
And, you know, you're trying to cut a deal with someone and he's already cut a deal to a higher power and no one wins and everyone kind of becomes the villain.
Yeah.
You know, and then it just ends and it leaves you with a
kind of
hole
an empty feeling
in your heart or something like that, that nothing has really changed and things will move on, and maybe that's the truth of the story and how things actually happen, but it's a real hollow experience.
Yeah, it makes you wary of putting your name down on anything.
Yeah, don't let anyone borrow anything.
Just put your name on it.
Yeah.
And there's a reason they're saying that. It's because they want something from you.
I guess it might serve as a warning.
Well, that's the Faustian story to a T. It's kind of it's almost like a fable in that there's a lesson for all the negativity that comes from his choice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's very plain and simple. It's a retelling of a Faustian take on the Phantom of the Opera.
Mm-hmm.
And lots of other elements, but yeah, it's not an enjoyable movie, but damn, it's worth a watch.
It's good. You won't waste your time with it. You'll probably be glad you saw it, but you're not going to watch it, maybe once or twice a year.
Yeah, I'd say if that. I'd probably watch it once a year.
Yeah.
It's enough to keep a copy on my shelf, but then again, it's also a very dusty copy.
I listened to the soundtrack more than I watched the movie.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent soundtrack. If you even rent it or get it off Netflix, wherever you can, and I guarantee you probably buy the soundtrack before you buy the movie.
Yeah.
But that's my. It's recommended for a once watch, and then see what you do after that. But
Do not disappoint us.
what's that from?
It's totally me.
That's totally you. Okay. Well, please don't disappoint him.
Splish splash, I was taking a bath. Long about a Saturday night.